Welcome back to another Collectible Spotlight. I'm that Halloween movie collector, Pat. This week, we're going to take a look at something called a CED, which was basically an early version of a Laserdisc. Actually, a second version, because Laserdisc did come out first. It was manufactured in the early 1980s, and I'm bringing it up on Halloween Collectors Spotlight because they did manufacture two Halloween CEDs at the time. One of Halloween 2 and one of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. They really didn't catch on too well at the time. There weren't all that many titles available. There was never even a title for the original Halloween 1978, probably due to licensing to because Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 was backed by Universal MCA, which was a much bigger company and did a lot more distribution. So that's probably why Halloween was never released at the time. Had it probably caught on, obviously it would have come out in much other titles, but they really didn't catch on at the time, then for a variety of reasons, which we're going to look into. But they're cool collectibles if you could find them and add them to your collection alongside all the other Halloween media that you may or may not have in your collection. If you do find them, don't be alarmed by some of the scrapes or some of the damage to the labels you may see on top, because they were much like cassette tapes where you slid them into a player. And over time, as you move things in and out of the player, you tend to probably get some damage to that. But you can find them in pretty decent condition. But you will, if you see some label damage, that's the reason why, because they were slid in and out of the player. So let's take a look into what a CED is. A CED stood for Capacitance Electronic Disc, which was an analog video disc developed by RCA to play in a player much like a video disc player at the time. To prevent damage and dust and particles from damaging the disc and player, the disc was housed in a plastic cover that would open once inserted into the player. The disc would be played by a stylus, much like a needle on a record player. And since it played much like a record player, you had the same issue you would have with a record. You'd have to flip it over. There was a side 1 and a side 2, just like an LP. And the disc inside was just like an LP, which it was actually, I think, 11.8 centimeters to be exact, but they just called it a 12-inch disc, just like an LP. So RCA first manufactured them. The first CED player to hit the market was the RCA SFT100W rather, on March 22nd, 1981. Several other models would eventually be released by RCA, as well as other companies like Hitachi, Sanyo, Toshiba. All the major companies put one out at the time. The first CED title to be manufactured, believe it or not, was Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown. Eventually, a catalog of 50-plus titles were released, which would contain Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. The main competition at the time were obviously from VHS, Beta, Laserdisc, and at the time, VHS was starting to dominate because VHS and Beta tape players in the early 70s were very pricey. And towards the end of the decade, in the early 80s, the price of them started to come down. Because, usually with a new release of anything, the price is usually through the roof. And eventually, as they manufacture more, the prices come down. So they were much more affordable at the time. And the advantage of the CD was the quality was considered exceptional. Early versions were mono, but they eventually released stereo versions as well, just to compete with the Laserdisc, which was pretty much comparable, and they did have exceptional video at the time, both Laserdisc and CEDs. Now, the disadvantages of CED, obviously, is you're going to have to flip it just like you'd have to flip a record. Longer movies would have to be on 2 CEDs, just like for those in my age group that would remember, double LPs, double cassettes, or the dinosaur, double 8-track tapes, because everything would not fit onto one media unit. At the time, like I said, VHS players really took over because of their ease. You could watch one movie and not have to flip anything. And the best thing is you could record, and you had different levels of recording. You could do 6 hours on EP, 4 hours on LP, and SP was, I believe, 2 hours. So that was the best video quality, and that's what CEDs would advertise and Laserdisc as SP quality on a disc. But once they get up and flip something, I mean, us people that are older listen to albums, so you had to flip, and you had to flip cassettes at the time, so you were sort of used to it. But it's like unheard of in this day and age. What do you mean I gotta get up and flip something? So eventually the CEDs went by the wayside. Around 1984, they just died out. RCA stopped making them. Actually lost a ton of money on them because they just didn't take off. So now they're collectibles, you know, especially if you collect media. I mean, I don't collect Halloween stuff, so and they only release 2 and 3, which I have sitting here right next to me, which they're pretty cool to have. They're very big and bulky and heavy. So, and displaying, I guess, you know, storing them at the time might have taken up a lot of space as well. And I've never opened them up. There are 2 tabs at the top. I guess that's when you inserted it. It would open up, release the top part of it, which you can feel is loose. And that's how I guess the disc came out and it played. So it's pretty cool to have in your collection alongside, you know, the other discs, like your other media, I should say, like the Halloween VHS, Halloween 2 and 3 VHS, the Halloween 2 beta tapes, and 3 beta tapes, and your Halloween 2 and 3 laser discs. So if you collect a lot of media, it's cool. You collect Halloween, it's great to have in your collection as well. I personally have never seen a CED play. I've never seen a player, because like I said, all we had at the time was a VHS player. We never even had a laser disc or a beta player. So you can still get CD players. I actually looked them up on eBay. You can get them for $100, $150, I guess, you know, especially for the nostalgia of 1980s stuff these days. People want to collect them, and so you can find them. They're not hard to find. Even CEDs are not hard to find. I believe at the time CEDs were around $25, $30 brand new. It's like if you wanted to go buy the H2 or the H3 CEDs, so they were around $25, $30 at the time. And they're not very inexpensive now, even if you find them on the collectible market between $50, $75. I mean, even stretching it at $100 for maybe a real nice condition one. I don't think I've ever seen one sealed. Well, I'm sure they were sealed at the time, but I've never seen one sealed for sale. So I'm assuming something like that might go for $100 because it's in perfect condition. Well, that being said, that's this week's Collectible Spotlight. I thought it was kind of cool to highlight it. And for those that never saw it before or never knew what they were, pretty cool stuff to add to your collection if you're a Halloween collector. Anything you'd like to see behind me or anything on my Instagram page, all my links everything's in the description below. Feel free to comment, mention anything you'd like to see a Collectible Spotlight on. I love looking this stuff up. It's learning along the way, and hopefully you guys are interested in learning something cool too. If you'd like to see my collection, it's at That Halloween Movie Collector, where I have on Instagram, where I have all my stuff, picture details and description of anything. So if you see something there, you want to do one, reach out to me and ask me to do a spotlight on something. If you want to learn a little bit more about it, or just geek out on Halloween stuff, because that's what I do. Also, I do a weekly Halloween Collectors podcast over on the Michael's Horror and Pinball channel at 7 p.m. every Sunday night. With 2 of my good buddies, fellow collectors, and just good friends. And we just have a lot of fun, rankings, talk Halloween, talk other horror movies, and just break each other's chops and have a great time. Check it out. You'll have a good time. And I also have a Halloween and Michael Myers Collectors group over on over in Facebook land and Facebook. Feel free to go check it out. Join and buy, sell, trade. There's memes. There's all sorts of Halloween stuff. People showing their collections and people connecting, making friends, and it's a good community of people. So I advise checking it out. So I'll leave it at that for this week. That's this week's Collectible Spotlight. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together, and I will talk to you soon.